What's going on, team? Time for another Fireside PM podcast episode. Today, I'm going to riff off of a question that I actually got in my back channel PM accelerator cohort, where, as part of that cohort, every week when we meet up, we usually leave a little time for a Ask Me Anything where I can answer questions that members of the cohort have about product management. And in the current cohort, one of our members, his name's Pat, he asked me, hey, what do you think is the future of product management? And what's it going to look like? And how should a PM early or mid-career think about these changes, and how can they best prepare themselves for success in this new world? And so we had a little bit of a discussion. I think we're probably going to dig in even more in this week's cohort discussion. But I figured I'd also do a quick presentation, threw some slides together with some early thoughts. You know, the caveat is, like, who knows what it's going to look like 10 years from now? I mean, the world's changing really fast, but I'm going to give you my best guess. And, you know, maybe if I'm 70% right, some of this will be useful to you. So let's go into the first thing that occurred to me is I'm not sure we're going to need nearly as many, or if any, really junior PMs. In the old days, the early career PMs, you know, either an APM or a MBA intern or maybe a fresh MBA hire, they're usually going to be doing a lot of tactical work. You know, write up this document, write up these release notes, summarize these interviews that we've done, do this market research. And as you all know, like, you don't need a human to do that stuff anymore. If you know what you're doing, you could do it yourself with the help of ChatGPT or one of the others. And that then questions like, well, why do we need this large incoming class of early career PMs? Now, you could argue, well, then you need them because you're going to need the next generation. Okay, yeah, so then it's more of a training and talent development versus an execution need. So you still might need some, but it might be more like a private equity firm kind of bringing in a very small number of analysts that eventually, you know, some small number of them become a partner. And it's not like a giant incoming class of, you know, McKinsey analysts where you need armies of consultants. Of course, I'm sure some would argue, like, why do we need armies of consultants anymore? But that's the first thing that occurs to me. And because you don't need PMs to do a lot of the tactical, you know, lower cognitive sophistication work, also known as grunt work, you probably want to start thinking about your leadership skills. And that's around guiding teams, collaborating with cross-functional team members, evaluating and recommending new directions. You know, these are things that we would normally have expected a more senior IC or even like call it like an L6, L7 PM to do. But you know, if we don't need the younger folks to do the grunt work, and you are one of the younger, earlier career folks, then you're going to be expected to do more senior work earlier, because we can use automation to do a lot of the work that we used to ask you to do. So that's something to keep in mind, that there used to be this nice ladder, you know, and that ladder is probably getting compressed. And if you're starting your career, you're going to need to move up much more quickly and demonstrate those skills at the higher levels. And it's going to be hard because you're going to still need to do some of the tactical stuff, but you'll use a lot of automation. And unfortunately, you're not going to have a lot of the actual work experience to know when the Gen AI is kind of like hallucinating or making um, bad recommendations. Like as an example, I use some Gen AI to produce the content on these slides, and it was 70% there, and then like 30% of it, I was like, no, just a bad recommendation, or that's not really true. Like if you're an undergrad now, one of the other skills you're going to need to think about, or even if you're in business school, is like, how are you going to develop the ability to call BS on the AI? How will you be able to know when the AI is being brilliant and when the AI is 20 degrees off, which makes your recommendation, probably 50% less credible? One last thing I would say is, now, if you're on the senior side, what does this kind of like compression mean to you? From a skills point of view, I think that's, in a way, you're kind of safer because, the vision, strategy, coordination, synthesis, bridge building, that's not something AI does a really good job of right now, and I don't think it will do a great job of it in the next few years. But maybe your job now is going to be managing this smaller teams of doers who don't have a lot of actual work experience and are kind of like teenage drivers. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. There's this compression, and it used to be like this pyramid where you had a lot of junior execution tactical PMs, and well, what's going to happen is you're not going to need as many of them, and it's probably going to get just compressed. The second thing that comes to mind is if you are a PM in the tech industry, you need to be able to think about what does an AI native product really look like. And my shorthand for that is, how do we move from adding some buttons with wands to an existing product and making wands that have a few buttons? And unfortunately, there aren't that many great examples. I actually think, like, for me, ChatGPT is probably the best example of a wand that might have a few buttons and attachment things, and but it's generally a magical wand first experience. Whereas, let's say if you're in LinkedIn and there's a little wand saying, oh, improve this title, or update, make suggestions for this resume. It's still pretty much the old LinkedIn with some AI kind of decorations that certainly make it more useful, but they don't fundamentally change the model. And to me, ChatGPT is like a fundamentally different way of actually doing web search. We used to acquire knowledge by going to Google, searching for things, reading a bunch of websites, and then in our head synthesizing it. Now you just go to ChatGPT and you ask it, like, tell me everything I need to know about product management. And, it does a pretty good job of getting you like at least 60% there, especially if you can then interrogate it and ask good follow-up questions. So as a PM, it's natural. Probably the last couple years, you've been thinking, oh, we can throw Gen AI here and there, and kind of, it's like adding, street lights to an existing street. And I think that's partly why we haven't seen amazing kind of blockbuster wins as many as we might have thought we would have seen by now. Certainly, there are plenty of companies that are worth billions of dollars. Whether or not they produce that amount of value over the long term and can grow profitably is a different question. I think we're going to need to move from adding street lights to some streets to saying, you know what, we need to build tunnels, or we need to have helicopters, or we need to have rockets, to use that transportation analogy. And we've just not seen it yet, and that's a good thing. If you're a PM, like the opportunity is there, it's green field. So think about ways that you can solve a customer problem where AI is going to allow you to do things and interact in a fundamentally different model of interaction than an accelerator of the existing thing. And so that's super exciting. And I think the PMs that figure this out and are able to help their companies, launch that next game changer, obviously you guys are going to do fantastic. And then for those who are in we'll add a bunch of lights to the streets business, it's not terrible. But it's like the equivalent of, maybe you were on the Facebook mobile team and you helped Facebook build a mobile thing and it was great and it helped Facebook stay relevant. It's not quite the same as being on like the original Uber team or the original, Airbnb team where they're like, you know what, we're going to freaking completely change how this whole industry works. Opportunities for both, but if you can build a wand with some buttons that works, probably going to generate more value for customers and your company than adding some wands to the existing buttons. Okay. Ooh, this is an area that I think is kind of cool, which is, in the, call it 2015 to 2022, trust and safety was a massive area of investment, especially with brand safety for ad-based companies. And there's emerging a new class of trust and safety, which is moving from how do we make sure we de-risk the bad actions of humans to now how do we make sure we de-risk what might be unintended but bad actions of AI. And that brings in all kinds of difficult ethical questions, regulation and accountability, and risk management. And I don't think the playbook has been written entirely on obviously we're all excited about moving to AI agents where they're going to act without a whole lot of hand-holding from the user. And the more powerful ones are going to be the ones that are going to be given a lot of latitude. And, the more latitude you give that agent and you ask it to do something, they're going to be creative, right? So you would hope that the agents are built on models that have some sense of governance kind of built in and they have safeguards in place, but we all know this is technology. Nobody really knows where this is going, and we are taking a great leap of faith here, and the horse is out of the stable, so there's no, let's take it slow. That was the approach of many of the tech incumbents, but I think once ChatGPT came out, everybody's off to the races. So because of that, if you're a company, if you're at a company and you can help contribute or lead the AI trust and safety effort and deliver a sensible framework and build the necessary technology and monitoring, reporting, escalations, it's probably going to be a whole new area because, brace yourselves, AI agents are going to be doing a lot of things for us, and I'm sure 99% of it is going to be really, really helpful and delightful. And then some is going to have some weird corner cases and unintended consequences. And the companies that are going to be able to reduce that 1% to, as close to zero as possible And when it's non-zero, be able to catch it quickly and take action and regain control of the agent will be great. If not, we're kind of screwed. Just don't give it access to the nuclear power plants just yet. Okay, now next is, there's going to be a lot of disruption to industries. I don't think this is one of those things where like, oh, FANG, there's going to be a new FANG and that group is going to run the whole table for the next 10, 20 years. Right now, obviously, OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, like they're kind of hot. Are they going to be the leaders 10, 15 years from now, the way that Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google were such dominant forces in the last few decades? I don't know, and I don't think so. And the reason is, especially as AI becomes cheaper and maybe commoditized, maybe you're not going to need to rely on OpenAI. Maybe you can use Llama or you can use some other thing. And that means that wherever you're working now, even if it's not one of those FANG companies, there's just going to be more competition and more companies taking chances and trying kind of those wand with buttons approaches. And some of them are going to really knock it out of the park and your company may not be around. So you've got to be ready for that disruption. And that's going to create opportunity in every major part of society, not just ads and not just, search, but also education, legal, the arts, like environment, everything. That means that as a PM, you may want to be ready to develop experiences that help you transfer things from the company you're at now to the company you're going to be at 3 years from now, and then the company you're going to be at 5 years from now. And my sense is that the one thing that's going to be a common currency for PMs for many years will be, well, how well can they pull a cross-functional effort together and drive a P&L? And that's in contrast to how big of a PM organization can they grow and lead, which used to be the currency of the land in the PM function in the past, which is like, well, I'm an IC, and now I'm a people manager, and now I'm a manager of managers, and now I'm a director, and now I'm a senior director. And this is the size of the org that I lead. And that certainly will be relevant. But I actually think shareholders and companies will expect, okay, that's great, because you can do more with AI, not only your team, but you yourself as a PM leader, are you able to produce financial results? And that's not something PMs have been asked to do as much in the past. So that'll be kind of exciting. Okay, next is the startup equation used to be that if you were going to do a startup, the advice I would give people is like, well, look, just so you know, like financially, that's not a very smart move. If you're able to work at a top tech company that's growing rapidly and you're going to perform well, then you're probably going to make more money than taking a stab at starting a company and, a small percent are going to raise a seed round, and then a small percent of that are going to raise an A, and a small percent of those A's are going to actually turn into like big exits, and even a small percent of those are going to become unicorns. So, and when you compare that to going to Amazon or Meta or Google, you'd be like, well, look, like this is how much they're going to pay you, and that's pretty much guaranteed, and it's probably going to grow and blah, blah, blah. So you add that up over a 10-year period, that's a pretty good amount of money versus what the common shareholder gets for a startup, because usually those common shares aren't worth a whole lot. That might be changing for two reasons. One is that those big companies, they're not growing as much. And so their stock isn't doubling every 6 to 12 months the way it might have back in the heyday. I remember in '06 when I was at Google, people were getting promoted like every 4 or 5 months. It was nuts. Or you just hire as much as you could. That was the biggest kind of limiter in some years was just can we get people through hiring committees? So that may not be the case anymore. Even the new kind of darlings of AI, like is OpenAI, they're currently worth like 150. Like, are they going to be worth 300 billion, in 2 3 years? And then are they going to be able to go to 900 billion and hit like Nvidia level? Maybe. But, even with Fang, there was a whole bunch of them. So there's like 5 of them, right? Are there 5 AI darlings right now? Not really, right? Anthropic, Perplexity, OpenAI, maybe Scale AI. I don't know. So my point is, those are awesome companies. But by the way, like they're already valued at extraordinary levels relative to their income. The other thing is that starting a company might be more attractive in some ways now than it was in the past because you're not going to have to hire an army of engineers. And as we discussed before, you may not need that many PMs. You may not need that many, as many, marketers. So you're going to be able to run way leaner. On the other hand, like your ceiling may be a little bit lower. So you might see this kind of like cottage industry where there's a lot of profitable little startups that are, 5 to 15 people and they just continue to do a great job. And that may be a more interesting path for some than getting on like the oil tanker that's kind of moving a little bit slower. Regardless, what you're going to want is to think about your future skills, which ties into our previous point. The startup now gives you it's a little more attractive. It's always been an asset to go to a startup and learn a variety of functional experiences. And you get that because it's dynamic and everything. But you might actually need more of that as a future PM, even when you're at a larger company, because they are getting compressed and they're expecting PMs to do more. So the equation for startups might be a little better than it was even 5 years ago. So something to consider. Okay, those are the biggest changes. Let me summarize them for you all. We'll go through them one more time. We don't need as many PMs, and we're going to expect people to do more. And more means leadership across multiple functions. You can't just be an expert in PM anymore. Okay, anybody that's going to be able to build brand new products that are completely reimagined with AI, where the whole foundational interaction approach is superior to the old, set of web pages tied together and a bunch of forms and buttons here and there, like they're going to do really well. There's going to be a whole new business of making sure AI agents and AI doesn't do crazy bad things. That's probably like the new frontier of trust and safety. If that's an area of passion for you, I think you're going to have a lot of opportunities and exciting work ahead of you. There will be a need to go outside of even PM and cross-functional collaboration to cross-functional ownership and P&L ownership. And that's going to be valued way more than managing large product orgs at scale. And the attractiveness of joining a startup is probably a little higher now than in the past because the opportunity cost of working at a large established tech company is not as great because those large established tech companies are not going to need as many people. They're not going to grow as fast. And they're also not going to grow their top line as fast. And there's probably going to be a new outcome for startups, which is like, yeah, of course, if you can be a unicorn, great. But what if you could become a really healthy, thoroughbred horse that is reliable and profitable and solves a problem? That might be your $50, $100 million company that is just, guess what, like brings in more money than it spends. So might be a whole new outcome. If this was useful to you and you want to stay in touch with me, follow me on LinkedIn. I also do one-on-one career and product management coaching. Thanks again to Pat from my current back channel PM cohort. I've got a new cohort starting up in a few weeks. So if you're interested and you're a tech industry product manager, you want to do a cohort-based kind of career planning, retrospective, introspection, discussions about how to grow in your career and be more successful in your current PM role. If you're in the process of finding your next one, check that out. And then I'm also doing some on the lookout for some amazing angel investing opportunities. I also do startup advising. So if you think you're going to build a new wand, let me know. Maybe there's a way to work together. And then I have a free PM to PM advice marketplace kind of network, completely free. It's at tomslist.com. And lastly, if you're a CEO of, let's say, like Series B to pre-IPO startup, and you're like, hey, I need a really experienced product leader for the company or lead a major new initiative, I would love to learn more about that too. And maybe I can help you out either as a consulting, fractional, acting, or maybe even a full-time gig if it's a great fit. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think of this advice. Where do you agree, disagree? I'll read and reply to all of them. Thanks in advance for liking and sharing. All right, let's get back to work.